In the last session, we have completed the step 2 of STLC. So far, we have seen about requirement analysis, test planning, test environment creation, and today we will see about test design activity. So after understanding all the requirements, we have created the test plan document. We have also created the test environment, and now comes the test design activity. So what comes under the test design activity? What exactly is test designing phase in STLC? As the name suggests, test design, designing the test. That means it mainly covers test scenarios writing, test cases writing. It basically covers all the detailed test cases writing, test data creation, test scripts if any, to ensure the software testing is thoroughly conducted. So, in test designing phase of STLC, we have to focus on identifying the test scenarios, writing out all the test scenarios, create a detailed test cases, we have to create a test data as well, and mapping those test cases with requirements. Now, what are the test cases? How to write the test cases? What is scenarios? That we will see in detail in coming sessions, but just understand on high level that in test designing phase, we have to write the test cases in detailed manner. We can also create the test data, and also we have to map the test cases to requirements. So if you have some functional requirements, in that, let's say we have one requirement related to login function. So login function requirements can have multiple test cases. So login with valid scenarios, login with invalid users, login with incorrect password, login with correct password, correct username, incorrect username, different type of users. So all these test cases are mapped to one requirement, that is login requirement. So that is called as a mapping the test cases to requirement. That is also called as a mapping test cases to requirements. So all these activities are conducted during test design phase. And what is the input we can refer for test design phase? Obviously, the functional requirement specification document, test plan document. So we have our, in previous phase we have created the test plan document that can be also used as an input to test design activity. Along with that, we can have user stories, any design documents. So develop product people can also create, along with the functional requirement document, they can also have design documents, because if there is a new UI which is coming to the product, for those UI, how it is going to look, what are the different type of buttons in it, drop downs, look and feel, color of the UI, all these things are created in some kind of a UI document that will be referred as a tester. So developer will also refer that document, but as a tester, we should always refer design document for writing the test cases as well. So these are the documents which will be used as an input for test design phase. What are the different activities that will be conducted during the test design? The first and most important again is we have to write the test cases. We have to identify the scenarios. For that, what we will need? We need some requirement, functional requirement document. We have to do analysis of all the functional and non-functional requirements. If there are any missing requirement, if there are any missing gap in the requirement, if there are some feature related doubts, we have to clear with stakeholders to ensure that we should have complete understanding of the requirement. So when you are going to write the test cases, at that point we should always have understanding of all the requirements. And then we can start with test case development. Before writing the test cases, we have to first identify the scenarios. So we have to first identify the test scenarios. And then we can break down those test scenarios. Basically, we can break down the requirements into high level test scenarios. Now, let's say we have one feature of registering a new user. Now, for registering a new user, that is one scenario. Now, that scenario or that requirement, basically, we have to divide in different type of scenarios. For example, registering a user with some specific number. Let's say registering a user with some specific country, etc. So registration, this is one of the example. Another example would be, let's say, adding a product to cart. So requirements we have to break down into multiple scenarios, high level scenarios we have to divide. And each scenario can have multiple cases. So each scenario can have single or multiple cases as well. So once you create a detailed scenarios, then we have to write detailed test cases. Test cases will be in detailed manner. It will contain different type of steps, test data which is needed, execution steps, what is the expected result. Example, let's take a login scenario or login test case. Now, in the scenario of a login, now login is a scenario. Validate login, this is kind of a scenario. And this scenario can contain different test cases. Verify with valid user login, verify with invalid user login, which can again have incorrect password, incorrect username, etc. So when you write the test cases, we have to write in detailed manner. For example, go to login screen, enter correct username, enter correct password, click on login. This is the test case for valid login case. For invalid login case, how we will write the test cases? We will write the steps. Step will contain visit the login page, enter incorrect username, enter incorrect password, click on login button. So this is the test case for invalid login. And every test case will have expected result. So every test case will contain some expected outcome. So that also we have to write in the test cases. So we will see about the test cases in coming sessions in detailed manner. But just on a high level, just understand what is test cases and what is scenarios. So whatever functional requirements we have to divide the functional requirements into scenarios. And scenarios can have single or multiple test cases associated with it. So in test design activities, we can write the scenarios as well. We can also write the test cases in detailed manner as well. So we have to write all the test cases. Then we can also do prioritization of test cases. Because when you write the test cases, there can be, let's say, take an example, there are 100 test cases. But out of those 100 test cases, depending on its importance, its risk, how critical it is to the business, how critical it is compared to all the requirement, we have to decide the priority. So highest priority will be assigned to very important and critically important features related test cases. So if you have some feature related to login, what is the highest priority of login feature? User should be able to log in if it's a valid credentials. User should not be able to log in if it's a invalid credentials. So these two test cases are very critical test cases. So priority for these test cases will be very high. So these test cases we have to prioritize. So we have to give the priority to each test case, whether it's very important. So priority can be given by different levels. For example, P0, P1, P2, etc. And normally P0 is most important. After that P1 and after that P2. So medium and low level test cases can come under P2 and P3 level. But the test cases which are very priority wise which are very high, those will be P0 and P1 test cases. So depending on criticality, risk factor, the impact of that test case, we have to prioritize the test cases to determine the order of execution. So high priority test cases will be executed very top manner, right? So first we have to execute always the high priority test cases. So whatever the test cases which are under P0 and P1, we should make sure that those test cases will be executed first. So that's why priority of the test cases is also important. Test data preparation. When you are writing the test cases, when you understood the requirement, you write the test cases for different type of scenarios. It can be a positive scenario, it can be a negative scenario, it can be some kind of a edge case, etc. And for some of those test cases, to produce that specific scenario, we need some kind of a test data. So as a tester, we should always identify the test data which is required to execute such test cases. We should prepare such test data in advance, ensuring that it will come very handy during the test execution phase. That test data should cover all the possible scenarios, including boundary cases, positive cases, and negative cases as well. So that comes under the test data creation. For example, if you have some feature in which you have to upload the image, and there are, let's say, 3 type of image extensions which are supported, like JPG, PNG, GIF, etc. So there are some supported image extension format, and there can be some unsupported image format. So you will write the test cases for supported format as well as unsupported format. So you should have all the test data ready. You should have some images, test images, which are having JPG extension, GIF extension, PNG extension, etc. So this test data you can create while writing the test cases as well. Once you start writing the test cases, you will understand what type of test data I need. So you should immediately collect that test data. So when the test execution will start, it will be very useful to have the test data ready during the test execution. That's why preparing a test data is coming under the test designing activity. Also, we have to set up the test environment. So we have to define the test environment configurations. We can document the hardware, software, network related configuration and other environment needs those are important for testing activity. We have to plan for setting up, managing and maintaining the test environment. So once you know that for this testing, for these many test cases, whenever you will start the test execution, before that you have to create the test environment. So we have to set up the test environment, we have to manage that test environment, and after testing activity is completed, we should always maintain that test environment as well. Because as a tester, it's our responsibility. We cannot just do any other activities on that test environment. So it should be always in maintain state, because maybe in another project or next time the same environment setup might be needed. So we should always maintain the test environment as well. Creating a traceability matrix development. So RTM is requirement traceability matrix document. If you remember, we have also seen that in test designing, we have to map the test cases with test requirement. So in login scenario or login requirement, so you will have functional requirement document. So every requirement can have some of the test cases, and those test cases should be mapped with that requirement. So when you are going to write the test cases, you should map those test cases with those requirements. So we should be able to understand which test cases are associated with which requirement, and that document is called as a requirement traceability matrix document. And we should ensure that each requirement is covered by at least one or more test cases. So each and every requirement in the document should be covered by at least one or more test cases. And once you write all the test cases, another important step is we have to review that test cases. So as a tester, you have gone through the requirement. According to requirement, you have written the test cases. But as a tester, we should always do some peer review first. Peer review means with your colleague or a fellow tester who can review those test cases. That is basically kind of an initial review of those test cases. So that colleague or peer, if they feel that there is some missing things, or let's say there are some suggestions or some area which might not be covered by the original tester, so he will get that feedback after the peer review. So some of the missing test cases can be identified during the peer review. And once these cases are identified, we can incorporate those test cases in our original test cases. And it will make it more robust, and it will ensure that each and everything is covered. This is the first round of review with peer review. And once peer review is done, we can also conduct one detailed test cases review meeting along with product manager, QA lead, developers, etc. Because when you perform this detailed test cases review activity, detailed test cases review meeting with other people like product manager who has actually created those requirements, QA lead. Now QA lead must have worked on some of the similar projects. He might have some better understanding of that feature so that he can highlight some of the area which might not be covered in our test cases. Developers also can give some feedback because sometimes some of the scenarios can be easily identified by developers as well. If there are any code level validations, developers can also identify such validation during the test cases review call. So it is kind of a very important meeting which will collaborative manner along with product people, QA lead, developers and tester who have written the test cases. So different type of feedback might come from different people, and it will help the tester to incorporate those feedback in these test cases. So it will ensure that coverage is increased and there are no missing things in the test cases. It will overall end up into a better quality because once you write the test cases, you are going to execute those test cases. If there is some test case which is missing in your original test case, then obviously you are going to miss that part during the test execution. And later when it deploys on production, issue might come around that area. So it's always better to do proper peer review first and then a detailed review test cases meeting with QA lead, product manager and developers as well. And after incorporating the review feedback, we will get some sign off for those test cases. So once you implement and complete all the review process, you incorporate all the feedback which is received into the test cases, and then we have to get official sign off on that test cases as well. So we can share that test cases with QA lead, product manager and even developers as well, so that they can review it from their end as well. And once we get the test cases sign off, the next phase is test execution phase. So it is very important as if the test cases are reviewed correctly, because it would catch more issues during the test execution and it will improve the quality of software. That's why we have to write the test cases correctly, get it reviewed by peer first and then get it reviewed by QA lead and product manager as well. So that comes under review and signing off the test cases. What are the different roles and responsibilities? Who is going to write the test cases? Creating the test scenarios and test cases is typically the responsibility of a test engineer. So we can say almost 70 to 80% responsibility of a tester who is going to work on that feature. So he has to write the scenarios, he has to write the test cases. QA lead can help him while reviewing. So once he write the test cases, he can give it to review to QA lead. Overall planning and coordination of the test design process, ensuring that the test cases align with the testing strategy and goals, and overseeing the quality and completeness of the test cases. So mainly it is responsibility of a tester to write the test cases, and QA lead can help him to get it reviewed. And what are the deliverables after this test design activity? First is obviously the test cases document which are approved and reviewed. So the reviewed and approved the test cases along with the test data and traceability matrix. So we have seen what is traceability matrix. It is a document in which basically we map the test cases with test requirement. So there is a requirement and that requirement are having some number of test cases. So this mapping is known as a traceability matrix. So after the test design activity, what are the deliverables or what are the outcomes? What are the documents which are available now? These are the test cases are ready. There is a test data which is ready, and there is a traceability matrix which is basically mapping of test requirement and test cases. So these are all the deliverables of test design activity. So this is about test design phase of STLC. In the coming session, we will see about the next phase of STLC.